Hello and welcome to That Florida Feeling. I'm your guest host, Kev Pound from the Stupid History Minute podcast. Hey, again, big thanks to Jody for letting me step in and take over a podcast that I never miss each week, and for giving me the chance to show you all that I can actually talk about history for more than just a minute. Now, I don't know if you ever heard this before, but I've lived in Florida my entire life, which means I've seen my fair share of hurricanes: Andrew, Matthew, Irma, Ian, you name it. And if you live here, you know the drill. First, the weather guy shows you a swirl on the map the size of Jupiter. Then, every Publix in the state runs out of bottled water and bread like it's the frickin' apocalypse. And finally, half your neighbors start making very questionable decisions involving plywood and duct tape. By the way, if you're one of those that put duct tape on your windows in the hopes that it will save them from a hurricane, all you're really doing is letting your neighbors know where the idiot lives. But I digress. Now, there's one storm that stands out to me in my lifetime, not because of how hard it hit, but because of how much it didn't. Hurricane Floyd, 1999. This thing led to the largest peacetime evacuation in United States history. Millions of people clogging highways, leaving their homes, stressing out for days, and in Jacksonville, the storm ended up missing us by over 100 miles. That's right. We basically evacuated for a stiff breeze. So let me tell you about how Floyd became one of the dumbest, most chaotic chapters in Florida's hurricane history. First, we got to rewind. Now look, it's September 1999. Y2K panic is a thing. Ricky Martin is living la vida loca. And Florida is doing what Florida does, sweating. Out in the Atlantic, though, tropical depression forms. It quickly strengthens into Hurricane Floyd. Not just any hurricane. This was a beast. By the time Floyd was fully developed, it was one of the largest storms ever recorded in the Atlantic at that point. A Category 4 monster with sustained winds of 155 miles an hour. The cloud shield stretched hundreds of miles across. If you pulled up a satellite image, it looked like half the Atlantic Ocean was spinning. And the track? Well, every spaghetti model out there had Floyd heading straight for Florida. Some models had it bulldozing Miami. Others had it rolling right over Cape Canaveral. And a lot of them pointed directly at Jacksonville. Duval. The headlines were apocalyptic. Storm of the century, worse than Andrew, Florida in the crosshairs. And if you were here, you remember it. It felt like the frickin' world was ending. And this is where the panic started to snowball. Here's the problem. When you've got a storm this big, and people in Florida don't realize this, or people outside of Florida don't realize this, but when you have a storm this big, officials don't want to gamble. Florida emergency managers looked at Floyd and basically said, nope. Everybody out. They called for the evacuation of 2.5 million Floridians. That's like telling the entire city of Houston just to take a hike. And the number doesn't even include those in Georgia or the Carolinas who also joined in the exodus. By that time, it was all said and done. Almost 3 million people were on the move. That made it the largest peacetime evacuation in United States history. Now, evacuations aren't supposed to work like this one did. Normally, they're staged by zones. Zone A goes first, then Zone B, then, etc. But in 1999, the system wasn't as refined. Officials basically panicked and drew huge circles on the map. People who lived 30 miles inland, nowhere near storm surge danger, were told to leave. Hospitals had to move patients, nursing homes had to evacuate frail seniors, and regular families were told to grab their pets, their kids, and their hurricane snack kit and GTFO. And at that point, Florida did what Florida does. It just turns things into chaos sometimes. If you think I-95 is bad on Memorial Day weekend, imagine millions of people trying to drive north at the same exact time. Cars were bumper to bumper from Miami all the way up here to Jacksonville, then into Georgia and beyond. Some stretches of I-95 and I-10 crawled along 5 miles an hour. There were stories of people being stuck on the road for 20 hours straight. Gas stations ran out of fuel. Hotels filled up in minutes. Rest areas turned into mini refugee camps, with families sleeping in their cars, dogs pacing in the grass, and kids crying because they were trapped in the back seat with no Game Boy batteries left. But what about supplies, you may ask? Forget it. Bottled water, gone. Bread, gone. D-batteries, gone. You had a better chance of finding a unicorn. It wasn't just families either. Nursing homes had buses of elderly patients trying to evacuate, sometimes with only paper medical charts and a frickin' prayer. Hospitals had to scramble to move the most fragile patients. The logistics were brutal, and it all clogged the system. Meanwhile, people in Jacksonville were still looking around like, guys, the sun's still out. Are we sure about this? So here's the thing. After days of hype and millions of people fleeing, and trust me on this, I'm born and raised in Jacksonville, Florida. Hurricane Floyd did not hit Florida. Got close, sure. But the storm curved north and passed by about 110 miles offshore from Jacksonville. What do we get? We got some cool wind, some rain, a little minor flooding in low-lying areas like Riverside and San Marco, a little at the beach. A few trees down, nothing remotely close to catastrophic landfall. If you were one of the millions who spent 12 hours on I-95 eating stale crackers while your toddler screamed in the backseat, you weren't too happy. Jacksonville basically got a storm that felt like a third-rate summer thunderstorm, while North Carolina, way up the coast, got hammered with rain and flooding. That's where Floyd's real damage ended up happening, especially with rivers overflowing and communities underwater. But here, good old Florida, the evacuation caused more damage than the storm itself. Businesses lost millions from being shut down. People got sick, sitting in traffic for days. Accidents happened on clogged highways, and the state's emergency response system looked, well, let's just say it looked like it needed a reboot, seriously. After Floyd, though, the state of Florida basically said, yeah, that didn't work. The evacuation was way too broad. The communication was fuzzy. People who didn't need to leave left, and that clogged roads for people who really did need to evacuate, like folks living right on the coast or in flood-prone areas. So after 99, Florida and other coastal states revamped their evacuation plans. They started drawing specific evacuation zones, color-coded maps to tell you whether you actually needed to leave or not. The improved communication, so instead of everybody just GTFO, people could make better informed choices, and they invested in contraflow plans using both sides of the highway to get traffic out of danger zones quicker. In other words, Florida taught Florida how not to evacuate, which, let's be honest, it's a very Florida way to learn. Do it wrong the first time, then we'll figure it out later. But here's a part that every one of my fellow Jacksonvillians remembers. The storm missed us by over 100 miles. That's like stressing for weeks, leaving your house, sitting in traffic for a day, and then realizing you overreacted to a mosquito bite. If you bring up Floyd here, you get one of like two reactions. Some will say better safe than sorry, and others will say that was the dumbest thing we've ever done. And in my opinion, both are true. But I gotta be a little bit real. Jacksonville kind of has this weird hurricane luck. Storm after storm seems to curve just enough to miss us. Some people say it's the shape of the coastline. Others say it's just luck. And a few folks claim it's divine protection, but we don't really listen to them. Whatever it is, Floyd was a textbook case of Jacksonville's storm shield at work. So there you have it. That's the story, Hurricane Floyd in 1999, storm that triggered the largest peacetime evacuation in U.S. history, sent millions of people on the clogged highways, and then cruised past Jacksonville without laying a finger on us. It was chaotic, it was stressful, and in hindsight, it was dumb. Some would say Stupid. But it also changed how Florida and the whole country handles evacuations. These days, when they tell you to evacuate, it's a lot more targeted, and hopefully you're not wasting gas money for no reason. Still, it's Florida. We always find a way to make hurricanes a little bit more ridiculous than they need to be. Thanks for hanging out with me on the podcast here, That Florida Feeling. I am Kev Pound from the Stupid History Minute podcast, reminding you to wear your sunscreen, drink your water, and in Florida, if it sounds ridiculous, it's probably true.
This podcast is a production of Unfiltered Studios. If you would like to know more about joining Unfiltered Studios, please visit our website at unfpod.com for more information.